Hallo weer en ons is bly jy is hier so vandag by ons oordenkings. Dit is Woensdag al die middel van die week weer, maar ons is dankbaar jy keer elke keer saam met ons en jy vat die tyd om stil te staan saam met ons by ons oordenkings. Nou ons praat bietjie die laaste paar dae rondom die waarde van die woord van God, rondom die Bybel en hoe belangrik en hoe kragtig dit kan wees in 'n deel van ons lewe. En baie van ons het miskien verskillende emosies of gedagtes rondom die Bybel, maar as ons werklik die Bybel sal begin verstaan en toepas in ons lewe, kan ek nie vir jou verduidelik hoe kragtig en magtig die woord van God regtig kan wees nie. In 'n deel van hierdie paar weke gaan ons ook kyk na the Bible Project en hoe dit ons kan help as 'n hulpmiddel om die Bybel beter te verstaan. Nou gister het ons na die eerste ene gekyk en ons net gaan kyk na wat is die Bybel en vandag gaan ons bietjie verder gaan en kyk na die verhaal van die Bybel, die storie wat dit omvang. Nou ek weet hierdie eerste week se Bible Project video's is almal in Engels, van volgende week af gaan hulle in Afrikaans ook wees, maar ek wil hê, vat gou die volgende paar minute, raak sommer rustig daar en kom ons kyk, waaroor gaan die Bybel? Wat is die storie, wat is die verhaal wat die Bybel inkleer vir my en jou, sodat ek en jy sal verstaan, hoekom het ons hierdie boek, en hoekom is dit deel van ons lewe, en hoekom is dit nodig dat ons dit ook sal lees. So kom ons vat die volgende paar minute, en kom ons kyk dit saam.
The Bible's an important book, but it's really long.
Yeah, it's a collection of many books written over a long period of time, but altogether they tell one unified story.
So, what's the story of the Bible?
Well, it begins by introducing us to a beautiful mind, the author of all reality, a being called God. And he has the power to take the dark chaos of the uncreated world and bring about order and beauty and a garden full of life.
And to crown this accomplishment, God appoints these creatures called humanity,
Or in Hebrew, Adam.
and they're made as God's image.
Which means that they're commissioned to rule this beautiful world on God's behalf by harnessing all of its potential and creating even more beauty and order.
This is a story about humans using their power to do meaningful, life-giving work. But the question is, how?
Yeah, humanity now faces a choice that's represented by a fruit tree. So humans could partner with God and find freedom by trusting in his knowledge of good and evil.
Or
They could seize power and define good and evil on their own, which, God warns, will kill them.
and they hear the voice of a dark, mysterious creature that tells them the choice is simple. Take the fruit. It'll give you power and freedom to rule the world on your own terms.
And so they seize this knowledge, and as a result, they become suspicious and self-protective. It leads to fractured relationships, violent power grabs, and ultimately, a whole civilization, Babylon, that has redefined evil as good. And so, God scatters this corrupted human project.
And here the story of the Bible takes an important turn. We zoom into the story of a man and a woman who come out of Babylon, Abraham and Sarah.
Yeah, God promises that from them will come a new people, a nation that has another chance to make the right choice. And if they succeed, it will open up this new way forward for the rest of humanity.
And this is why the rest of the Bible story is about this family.
And it does not go well. Despite God's personal guidance, Abraham's family gives in to that same temptation to redefine good and evil on their own terms, apart from God.
Even when their best people were in charge, rulers who loved God's guidance and had divine wisdom, even they gave in.
And so Israel was warned by their own prophets that these choices would lead them back to Babylon, this time as conquered captives living in exile, and that's exactly what happened.
So even with God's personal guidance, Israel fails. Who can succeed?
Well, the prophet said that the story wasn't over. God's going to send a new leader to Israel to cover for their failures and to transform the people's hearts and minds so that they can make the right choice.
And so the part of the Bible called the Old Testament ends, and these promises are left hanging.
And then the biblical story continues into the New Testament. We're introduced to a man who comes from the line of Israel's kings, Jesus of Nazareth. And he said that he was bringing all these promises to their completion.
He confronted that dark, mysterious evil that all humanity has given into and resisted its power.
And then he announced that God had arrived to rule the world through himself. Jesus taught about God's definition of good and evil, and he said that real power is serving others. According to Jesus, it's people who love the poor and even love their enemies. These are the kinds of people who actually rule the world.
And that's confusing, but also really beautiful.
And so is the claim that the story goes on to make about Jesus, that he is God become human, to be for Israel and for all humanity what we could never be for ourselves. He came to take the consequences of our evil into himself, and his sacrificial love proved more powerful than evil, than even death itself.
So now humanity's presented with a new choice.
Represented by a new tree.
Stick with the old way of being human, or venture into this new way.
And in the story, those who choose the way of Jesus find themselves energized by God's own power. People who know that they are loved and forgiven by God can become people who love and forgive others in return.
The Jesus movement quickly spread throughout the world, forming these new communities of people who follow the way of Jesus.
But they faced problems. There was persecution from the outside by people in power, and inside there was confusion, even compromise.
Yeah, because following Jesus is really hard.
And so the movement's leaders, called apostles, they wrote letters to comfort and to challenge these communities to stay faithful to the difficult way of Jesus.
And they're called to hope for the day when Jesus will come and change everything.
And so the Bible ends by pointing to the future day, when all wrongs are made right, when evil is eradicated, heaven and earth are united, and humanity can rule the world together in the love and power of God.
Okay, so that's the story of the Bible, and it brings all of these books together.
But what's interesting is that each book contains a different kind of literature that contributes to this story in a unique way, and that's what the next video will begin to explore.
Ek dink wat 'n wonderlike manier om net bietjie die Bybel in 'n geheel te verstaan, hoe die storie loop, van die begin waar God alles gemaak het, reg deur die mense, die sondeval, en hoe die Here in en deur hierdie hele tyd en deur geskiedenis 'n plan gehad het om sy seun Jesus te stuur. Hulle sê, the Bible Project, it's a quote wat hulle sê, the story of the Bible is about humanity's cycle of self-destruction and the Messiah who will restore the covenant partnership between God and humans. Dis die storie. Die storie van die Bybel is hoe mensdom verkeerde keuses gemaak het, sonde het ingekom en hoe daar 'n gaping tussen ons en God gekom het. En die Bybel leer en wys ons hoe hierdie gebeur het, maar ook hoe God daai kom herstel het deur sy seun Jesus Christus. En dit is die storie. Julle, dit is die grootste storie waaroor alles gaan. En dis my en jou storie, is dit ook nie net nie, nê? Iewers het sonde of die wêreld die beste van ons gekry. Iewers het daar gaping tussen ons en God gekom. Maar as jy Jesus Christus aangeneem het as jou persoonlike verlosser en saligmaker, as jy in verhouding met Jesus leef, is die Bybelstorie ons storie. Hoe God en mens weer by mekaar kom, hoe ek en jy in verhouding mag leef deur Jesus Christus. Hierdie storie is nie maar net 'n ou storie van 'n klomp mense jare terug nie. Nee, hierdie is die storie, die belangrikste storie. En ek bid dat hierdie storie altyd deel van jou lewe sal wees. Ek bid dat jy jouself gereeld sal indelf in die storie, sal lees en dat jy werklik sal besef hoe kragtig dit is. Want hierdie is ons storie, dat God weer naby aan ons gekom het en dat ons weer in verhouding mag leef met hom en sy hart vir ons en sy liefde vir ons. Martin Luther het hierdie gesê, the Bible is the cradle wherein Christ is laid. En dit is my so mooi. Alles waar dit gaan oor Jesus. Mag jy dit besef vandag. En as jy nie weet nie, waar ook al jy is en hoe jou lewensstorie lyk, mag jy besef, Jesus het jou lief en hy het af aarde toe gekom om jou en God se saak reg te maak en dat jy in verhouding met hom mag leef. Kom ons bid ook saam vandag. Jesus, so baie dankie. Dankie vir hierdie storie. Dankie vir die groot verhaal. Dankie Here dat ons beter kan verstaan die groter prentjie. En Here, dankie dat hierdie ook ons storie is. Dankie dat U ons met U verenig het weer deur U seun. En ons loof en prys U en dankie daarvoor, Here, want ons kan nie hier op ons eie krag doen nie. Ons sonde, die wêreld se sonde, alles, Here, is net te veel en te erg. Ons eie sonde is net te erg. Maar dankie Jesus. Dankie dat ons nie op ons eie krag of insigte hoef staat te maak nie, maar Here op U en op Jesus die opoffering. En ons loof en prys U dat ons mag die Bybel hê, dat ons die storie mag lees en dat ons sal besef hoe lief U ons het en waaroor alles eintlik gaan. Ons loof en prys U vandag en ons kom bid dit in die mooiste naam, in die naam van Jesus. Amen. Baie dankie dat jy hierso was vandag. Geniet jou Woensdag en ons kuier môre lekker weer verder saam. Mooi bly.